make these reports public, but they're also supposed to submit the same reports to the National Assembly, I believe within some days after publishing the same in the Gazette notice, I think 10 days. Now, I love this proposal because for the longest time, we have had issues with and this is in the public domain, we've had issues with DPPs just withdrawing cases. And I'm sure when we look back, we'll see so many cases that were withdrawn in the past year. And it even caused an uproar in the public, if I can remember so well. So this will actually, if this proposal is adopted, then it will give some form of accountability to the DPP. So they won't be now relying on the excuse that, well, DPP is an independent agency, so we can do as we please. Basically, that's what they mean. But once this proposal that the bill is proposing, then at least there'll be some form of accountability. And once these reports are published in the Gazette notice, it will be easy for the public or the citizens to scrutinize these reports and even take the DPP to court to hold them accountable. That is one of the good benefits that I'm seeing with this proposal if passed. So, of course, again, where the DPP refuses to execute or rather prefer charges against a public official, and it is clear from what they have published that this person indeed is supposed to be charged with this act. This is something I'm just thinking, but I feel like we need to give it as a proposal to within the bill, so that it can be added or improved to give leeway for more accountability to the DPP in such a way that, because right now, in as much as they are going to give quarterly reports and all that, I'm not seeing a situation where if an action is to be taken, the DPP will be compelled to do it unless we go to court so that the courts can compel them to do it. So since there are no consequences in this proposal, I feel like we can have that comment added when submitting, of course, our comments to the Parliament, to have that considered to be added. Another thing is on the penalties of corruption-related cases. We have been noting that there are some corruption-related offences that require more stringent penalties, and the bill has come with some of those proposals to at least tighten some of those penalties. So I'll give an example, but the reason why I'm pointing out this example is because I had an issue with it. And as a team, and we can also think about how we can enhance that proposal to the Parliament. For example, in the procurement-related corruption offences, of course, we know procurement corruption is one of the major avenues of corruption, especially in the public sector. I hear it is really dubbed as pay for tender. But this proposal proposes that such persons, if found guilty, they are not only jailed, but their licenses, or rather they should be debarred for a period of 10 years. So meaning the procurement officers will not be eligible to practice or to be licensed for 10 years for them to practice. So the issue I have with this is that it does not give room for this person who has been found guilty of a corruption case to be debarred permanently, or rather his license is revoked permanently. Because I'm thinking of a scenario where we have the licensing body is of the opinion that this person who has been clearly convicted of a corruption case does not deserve any license. Then that person who is being denied that license atakimbia court aseme, but the law says I can only be debarred for 10 years. So I already did my 10 years. So why can't they give me a license? But clearly, do I say morally speaking or ethically speaking, I cannot give you a license for you to continue practicing after you've already been convicted for a corruption case. So my proposal or rather comment that needs to be addressed under this is the proposal needs to be, or rather the provision needs to be clear that as long as someone has been convicted, then there needs to be a room of this person can either be permanently revoked, the license can either be permanently revoked by the licensing body, or there be some form of leeway to increase the number of years that this person can be debarred, because as the provision is as drawn, it only says that this person can be debarred for a period of 10 years. So that means a maximum of 10 years. Beyond that means anaweza endelea. And if this person the way the courts say, hajasoma funzo, hajakuwa funzo, then what's to stop him from engaging in corruption related acts? Nothing. So that is also another thing. I think it's a loophole that I've seen also in this proposal, and I feel like if that is addressed, then we'll be on the right path. The bill also proposes that the ESCC be given the powers to freeze assets for about 30 days during the investigation phase. And in my opinion, I think David will either correct me or improve on that. Initially, whenever the ESCC went to court to with evidence that they have been able to gather, the defense counsel, of course, will raise an objection claiming that this person was, or rather, this evidence was acquired illegally and all that and all those other. And it actually brings a challenge to the ESCC officials because, let me just use an example of a case that I'm aware of where the court issued a warrant for the officials to go and search someone else's house, specifically to get evidence that is linked to the complaint they were investigating on. And when they got there, they found that there were other forms of evidence that would potentially raise other offenses within the law. But because they were asked to just go for a specific kind of evidence, in as much as they had already collected those other evidence that would potentially raise other offenses, the court had to strike that kind of evidence out. And with that kind of setback, unaona inarudisha EACC nyuma kidogo. So in terms of, I'm going to combine the proposal on freezing of assets and the bill proposal on them being free to investigate on other accounts. The proposal that has been given by the current bill, if passed, the ESCC's investigative powers will be enhanced in such a way that if they're allowed to freeze assets for about 30 days during the investigative phase, it means that they can be able to use that period to ensure that that property is not disposed of by the person who is being investigated on. And number two, they are able to also, in the other proposal that proposes that they are able to fully access and investigate financial records, they will be able to get into this person's bank accounts, mobile money transactions with M-Pesa and so on, but only with a court-issued warrant in such a way that it basically widens their scope for investigations so that it can cure the hurdle from the case I've just explained about. And this is good because it will further enable this commission to track illicit financial flows and gather crucial evidence that will strengthen their case and also result in a stronger conviction. But as a proposal in these two main provisions that proceed to enhance the ESCC's investigation powers, from my end, I feel like, especially on the access to financial records, there is a potential challenge that I'm foreseeing, especially on the protection of privacy rights. Because remember, a bank account, M-Pesa transactions, and so call data and such things, that is private information. And there will be strong objection against someone accessing your account so that they can get more evidence to prosecute you. I am foreseeing a situation where they are going to be like, well, I don't want to self-incriminate myself, so why should I give you the permission to do that? Of course, when that thing arises, it will be um, another hurdle that will be will be faced by ACC. In as much as it is a court issued warrant, it means now the ACC has to go beyond, way beyond, to prove that there is a cause for this. So, in my opinion, there needs to be at least a provision or an improvement on that clause that brings a balance between the right to privacy and the SEC's investigative powers. And once that is clear, then I believe that hurdle will be prevented at this stage.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Another, okay. Then the
Mm-hmm.
last one, because I just want to address the last the last point I
Okay.
had mentioned on the freezing of assets for the EACC. And one point that we can improve on that is, in as much as they are being given the leeway to freeze assets, remember it will collide with the Assets Recovery Agency's mandate. And to make sure that there is no such confusion, the bill can proceed to actually improve on that clause to ensure that there is no such confusion in future. So I think those are the main things that I can say for now.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much, Diana. Just speaking on ESCC, I'd like to tag in David. Speaking on the amendments or the proposed amendments that we've had from Diana and also in the bill, do you think that these amendments will strengthen or they will weaken the fight against corruption in Kenya? David, if you may.
Thank you very much, Lynette. And also thank you very much, Diana. I have listened to Diana and I think she has made quite concrete points concerning these proposed amendments. But I think there are a number of issues that we need to bring into the real context. One, I think she has talked about the need for capacity, especially from the court's side, from the side of the DPP, and also from the investigative bodies, that is EACC, as well as any other body that may invoke these provisions. I think that is a point that we cannot overemphasize. It is very important because, especially when you look at the timelines that this bill is proposing, it will require that all these entities be ready. One thing I can assure you that usually hampers the criminal justice process, especially when it comes to corruption cases, is what I would call witness fatigue. And sometimes we can even try to bash the DPP, but I think that can also be unfair. Sometimes witness fatigue comes in as a result of a delayed prosecution. So a case of corruption will usually have a lot of evidence. It will have very many witnesses. So have 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, you are still calling evidence, you are still calling witnesses. And of course, it leads to fatigue. Some witnesses will fall by the wayside, some evidence will be objected to. And generally what this happens is that dragging of the proceeding, that fatigue actually has an impact or an implication on how the ultimate end of the case. And sometimes the DPP may be faced with no other alternative than maybe to withdraw. I'm not saying it happens all the time, but I think we should examine those cases on a case-by-case basis. We cannot really blame the DPP alone or EACC or even the courts. There is that aspect of the fatigue. And the proposed timelines, I think they are quite strict, but it is forward-looking. I think we should really support that. The parallel that was drawn when these proposals were being made, I recall, is that when we have these election petition cases, and the law says they must be determined within 6 months, we have seen the courts really complying and those cases being finalized within those timelines. and it saves everybody good time. It means a lot for the criminal justice sector. So for me, I think the timelines again proposed are good, but we need to look into the issue of capacity of the main players in the criminal justice sector. Diana also talked about debarment. To me, when you look at the proposed amendment, I think it is clearly addressing the players in terms of the tenderers or the service providers using the public procurement system. And I think the debarment that is considered here is to debar them from participating in a tendering, giving services in terms of goods, services, or works to the government for a period of 10 years. So I really did not get whether Diana is proposing that the same kind of debarment should be extended to the practitioners in the procurement field, for example, the procurement professionals, because to me, what it is addressing are the main players, the tenderers, the people who have applied or tendered to provide services. Once they are convicted of corruption in procurement-related offenses, then they are debarred from participating in any other tendering where government is seeking services, goods, or works for a period of 10 years. Of course, we cannot advocate that they be debarred for life because, again, the justice, the way the justice sector works, a person, I think, is also given time to repent and to show that they have remorse and they have actually reformed. So I think 10 years to me is not bad. I think it is punitive enough. It has a deterrent effect. I would rather we remain with the 10 years that is proposed on the debarment. Diane has also talked about the freezing of assets. To put this matter into context, the law, the ASECA, the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act, it allows EACC to seek preservatory orders to maintain an asset for 6 months pending investigations. That is already there, it is in the law. We have applied that provision since the commission was established, even from the very early days of the KACC. And to me, it works well. But when we examine the 30-day issue that has been proposed by this proposed amendment, what it is saying is simply this. If you have applied for a warrant to investigate a bank account, then in that application for the warrant, you can ask for an order that any funds which are in that account be preserved for a period of 30 days. To me, that is a fantastic proposal, and if it is allowed, it can really help. Remember, for the application of the 6-month period, the preservation orders you get, you have to serve the other party, you have to be heard, they will come and object, a court can issue any other orders. But this one now, the warrant is ex parte. You are going to court and saying, please preserve the funds in this account for me for 30 days pending conclusion of these investigations. And I think this is something that even happens administratively in other jurisdictions, so it can be of real help. Now combine this with the other preservation orders for 6 months. Once you have established the funds have an issue, now you combine that in the application for 6 months, you have already secured the money that is in this account. So I would think for me, it is a very, very good proposal which should be supported. On the ARA mandate, I think we have been working well. When you look at the mandate of the ARA, it is mostly under the POCAMRA, the Proceeds of Crime and Anti-Money Laundering Act. EACC actually implements more on the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act when it comes to investigation of corruption offenses. And the few amendments that have been coming through, piecemeal amendments, they have really served to define the boundaries of each entity. So for now, I would say we are still working well, although there could still be room for improvement. And sometimes overlap of mandates in some small instances is not necessarily a bad thing. Lynette, you'll agree with me if I say that the corruption out there is so huge, it is so big that we are not doing what is supposed to be done. If the more, the merrier. So even if ARA was to look at it, these assets, and it does ABCD, and EACC is also looking at the corruptly acquired assets and ABCD, we will still work in harmony. All we need is to synergize instead of having conflicting mandates or start fighting to protect our turfs. That said, again, what we need to check or to safeguard is to ensure that corruption cases are not defeated on the basis of an overlap of mandate, such that even if the mandate overlaps, it should not decriminalize or criminalize the proceedings or operations by the other entity. So as long as two entities can do something and they can take a proceeding out of it, I would say that the better for the country. But now directed to the question on the impact of these proposals on the fight against corruption. Personally, I would say I'm happy with them, and I would really thank the Attorney General for coming up with these courageous proposals. And just to mention a few of the things that these proposals seek to do, I know, of course, Diana has mentioned quite a number, the timelines for the cases, the turnaround times in terms of the investigations and the completion of the hearing. First of all, they are proposing that the actual case of corruption before the special magistrate should be determined within 6 months. An appeal, of course, with the High Court should be determined within 3 months. And a second appeal, maybe to the Court of Appeal, again to be determined in 6 months. To me, that is very good. It can cure this problem of witness and evidence fatigue. These proposals are seeking to address the various gaps, weaknesses, and loopholes in the law. And I thank Diana for elaborating that and elucidating that very ably. So I will not go into that for the interest of time. But there are other issues. The procedural issues that sought to be clarified and simplified by these proceedings, by these proposals, are quite good. They are forward-looking. For example, if you look at the proposals to the ASECA, the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act, it clearly says now the procedure to recover corruptly acquired assets is a civil procedure. And it says that the commission will investigate, it can file that case irrespective of whether there is a conviction or not. The other side will be given an opportunity to respond. So in essence, when it is made a civil matter, of course, the other thing that goes there is the standard of proof. So we have a lowered threshold in terms of the standard of proof that the commission needs to prove, and it makes the work a bit easier. These proposals have also sought about look to the issue of admissibility of some evidence. It is saying, for example, you don't have to struggle so much to bring a human resource manager of an entity to come and just to prove to the court that the suspect of this, the salary that was being paid to this suspect is Kenya shillings ABC. Once you have that certificate by the entity that you have investigated, then it becomes admissible without having to call the maker. There are also the proposals, I think, are enhancing the accountability mechanisms. I think Diana has talked about that. They have also sought to address aspects of the advances in technology. For example, where they say that summons to be issued to suspects can also be issued in electronic format. To me, those serve to simplify the proceedings. And again, when they bring in various proposals, for example, to enhance the sentences, to create offenses where or no offenses had been created, especially when you look to the amendments proposed to the Leadership and Integrity Act, it serves to enhance the deterrence effect of the law. So for me, the general analysis of these laws, I would say, without fear, is to say that they will strengthen the fight against corruption. But again, in support of what Diana has said, is that we need to look into the issue of capacity, and also something that Lynette, you mentioned, which is the government, the political will to enforce those, but we'll talk about that later. So in a nutshell, Lynette, allow me to say that these proposals are good. They will really strengthen the fight against corruption. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Now, just speaking into the political will, and I'd like to pose this question to the Honorable Senator. Looking at the key changes in the proposals, how will these proposals impact Kenya's governance? Do you feel like this is a way of the government to exercise their political benefit or political gain? Or what are your thoughts, basically?
Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I may not speak with the eloquence of the two speakers who have gone after me, the two land fellows. But in my broken prose, I'll say that this habit of blaming the law, every time we blame the law when we fail, needs to come to an end. I think we have enough laws to address the challenges that we face in terms of public finances, fiscal discipline. I don't say whether the fight against corruption and whatever corruption means will go away, will be successful for as long as we mischaracterize the crime of theft. To me, the crime of theft should be addressed as theft and should be the full force of the law enforcement should come on it. Now, when you look at the ACC is largely a bureaucracy. It politicizes the fight against corruption or the fight against the theft of public assets. If you look at the core mandate of the EACC under Article 79, is to enforce Chapter 6, which is not a crime-fighting mandate. That small chapter is largely a code of conduct. The ASECA and other things are Parliament adding the EACC more work. But the core mandate of the EACC is to ensure discipline in the public service as provided for in Chapter 6, which does not involve any crime-fighting powers. So that area has been left unguarded. That's why you find a lot of funny things going on and nothing happens. Now, in terms of crime fighting, you look at the EACC itself. Recently, they had the changeover from over the CEO. The EACC is an independent commission. And like all independent commission, it has the powers to appoint its own, it's a power to appoint its own staff. And the staff may include the CEO. But look at what happened the other day when the CAC was recruiting a new CEO. It came to Parliament. The president it came to Parliament. Yet Article 252 is very clear. Those one C that each commission and each holder of an independent office shall recruit its own staff. So when you bring the CEO of the EACC to Parliament for approval and appointment, who is now appointing who is now in charge of the CEO? To whom does the CEO answer? To politicians. And you expect the commission now to be independent when the CEO has already been captured. He can ignore the commissioners. So to me, I think we've got enough laws. We just need to enforce the laws we have. So if we can't recruit a CEO of the EACC according to the Constitution, Article 252, Clause 1, Paragraph C, then I think all that we are going to discuss is not merited. Let us also, it's been quite some time since the new constitution came into force. I would have preferred, instead of rushing for new laws and whatever, I would have preferred an audit of the EACC to inform us that where the problem lies, an independent audit. That way, then we would be able to know what ails the EACC, the EACC in terms of executing the extra mandate Parliament has given it, which mandate directly falls, it properly belongs to the Kenya Police. We would then find ourselves, why is it that in some counties, the EACC writes the roster reports like the last report that came out the other day. Read it. It's a very rosy report. It's clearing governance. It's doing whatever, and some of us know that's not true. Some of us have reported cases to the EACC and nothing happens. Instead, you are mocked. You are told you can go as many times as you want to the EACC. We shall see. We know how to handle them. So I don't think that the law is the problem. And we can write as many laws as possible. I don't think we are going to get anywhere. What I think we needed to do before coming up with more laws, for me, was to audit the ACC. Find out how many cases were reported to it. How are they handled? About 90% of the cases reported to the ACC never see the light of day. They never get properly investigated. So personally, I find it very sad and painful that the blame is now being shifted to whatever, to the legal framework. This particular law has good things. It also has some things that don't make sense to me. Like if you look at the definition of a relative, means a person who is related to a public officer by birth, marriage, common law partnership, adoption, or affinity, and includes a public officer's father, mother, son, daughter, brother, sister, uncle, aunt, great uncle, those are brothers of your grandfather and sisters of your grandfather, first cousin, nephew, niece, husband, wife, grandfather, grandmother, grandson, granddaughter, father-in-law, mother-in-law, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, stepfather, stepmother, Now, how would a conflict of interest arise because of this? If I'm a public officer, why does a conflict of interest arise when the brother of my grandfather wants to do business with government? So some of these things I think are overkill. I just think that this whole thing we call corruption is mischaracterized. It is theft by servant. And the same force that we deal with thieves should be applied to those who steal from public offices. When we call it corruption, we sort of sanitize it. We sort of make it like a pastime. Just like we've mischaracterized robbery and violence in the North Rift, where people are killed and their cattle are taken, by calling it cattle rustling or some cultural activity. And then the law enforcement is helpless before it. You have seen people going when they are called someone to the EACC. They go with delegations, they perform catwalks or chest stamping. If they are men, they chest stamp like male gorillas. If they are women, they walk like they're on a catwalk with their followers and acolytes. And they appear before the ICC. You have never seen a similar situation before a police station. Because the ICC is an elite club, it's an elitist institution. I would love a situation whereby these thieves are arrested and thrown on the floor of a police cell, answerable to an OCS. And the money that is being wasted on the EACC be used to beef up the police and especially the CID department on economic crimes and whatever. And the EACC goes back to ensure that you're enforcing ethics in public offices, so that it should be able to ensure people are reporting to work, people are performing. We have a situation whereby, like, most medical facilities, doctors come in, hang in their coats, then they go and sit in their private clinics. That's what corruption is, not theft by servant. They should be able to deal with that kind of corruption and ensure people are at their work desks, the public is being served. And where they encounter an aspect of theft, they should hand over to the police so that those people are handled by the police. But then we have got the ASECA, which gives the ACC those powers. But look at the structure of the ACC. The directors, what capacity of crime busting do they have if you have to handle crime? What's the capacity of Bishop Oginde to tackle a crime? With due respect to the Honorable Bishop. Look at the directors, the commissioners. What capacity do they have as crime busting entities? And why do they have to go and raid the Kenya Police Service for officers to do investigations and whatever, and then distort the pay? They pay them more than the other officers. So I personally think that we need a complete overhaul to locate this institution within the Constitution, and especially Article 79 of the Constitution, and then see where does Parliament get the powers to enact the ASECA, which was enacted before the current Constitution anyway, to vest police powers in this civilian organization. I don't know, but I'm just thinking aloud that maybe going forward, we need to engage in a lot of thinking aloud, and maybe also think of why Parliament, why the drafters of the Constitution at, I think it's Article 145 or something, Article 245, 245, I think. 245 something, they say they 245.8, yeah, 245.8. The framer said Parliament shall enact legislation to give full effect, and then they also, at Article 247, that's the article I should have read, Parliament may enact legislation establishing other police services under the supervision of the National Police Service and the command of the Inspector General. I tend to think that Article 247, when read with Article 79 of the Constitution, bars Parliament from enacting laws like the ASECA, which vest police powers into a civilian commission. And maybe if you want a special organ to deal with theft in the public service, theft by servant in the public service, which is Honduras. Billions, trillions of money is being stolen. Then maybe here we would be dealing with the Parliament setting up maybe the economic crimes unit of the CID being set up as a special police unit and being facilitated to be able to deal with the crime properly. And I'm saying that because I'm very bitter of the EACC. In 2015 or so, the EACC, when the Eurobond thing was up, the EACC issued a press statement saying that they are going to investigate the Eurobond and tell us what happened. I've been waiting for that report until today. Nothing doing. No money there. A lot of odious debt running into trillions of shillings. Economic crimes. Money being borrowed and not being brought back into the Kenyan municipality. Nothing being done. So you wonder whether we are going to forget these people are looting the country by the trillion and just focus on petty issues in terms of comparatively petty, because if somebody has hammered a trillion, and here we are dealing with somebody who has stolen a million, comparatively petty, and then the fellows who steal these billions don't come. There's 7.1 billion, a billion US dollars stolen through the Eurobonds. The ACC have not lifted a finger because the big boys are involved. Now, what do we do? So do we write more laws and believe that will make it possible for us to win this war? Or do we go back and say, let there be accountability? What kind of thefts have gone on in this country? And how has this organ engaged with it? And if it's not engaging, then we go back and say, okay, we don't need it to be doing or to be engaging in crime, and then we boost our police. But let us be faithful to the law. Let us be faithful to the law. I don't think the framers of the Constitution ever anticipated that crime would be fought by a civilian organization. Parliament under 247 was given the power to create special police forces, and that could be the way for me to fight crime and beef up the powers of the police, and so that we can be able to begin engaging with the crime on the revenue side of things. I've not seen a single case on the revenue side of the theft of public funds that the EACC has investigated or prosecuted. Yet that's where we lose a lot of our money. I only see them pursuing expenditure. Civil corruption in the way policies are formulated. When we say our budget should contain, as according to Article 220, plus 1 of the Constitution, our budget should contain estimates of revenue and estimates of expenditure put out there. I've not seen the ACC interrogate that. When the Minister for Finance is always publishing that monthly statements of actual revenue and net expenditure, which clearly demonstrate that what is being implemented is not the budget Parliament approved. I've not seen the EACC raise a finger about that. And those are the areas where we are being looted. This country is on its knees right now because our debt, our odious debt has hit the roof. I think the last figures I saw about repayment of debt, about 1.7 trillion shillings repaying debt, out of which only 700 went to repaying the principal and $1 million was paying the interest. Totally unsustainable. So I think that this law we are discussing is not a panacea of anything. It's just going to add to the confusion we have. Let us call theft theft. Let us prosecute people who steal public funds as thieves. not as corrupt people. Being corrupt is becoming fashionable in this country because it looks like that's how people gain power and keep it. Let us deal with theft by servant as theft by servant. People are stealing from public offices. There are servants in those offices. They should be dealt with. Look at corruption. Go and look at the allocation of roads over the past 10 years. Look at how roads have been allocated in this country. My own Busia comes out at the bottom rag. Some counties have been given billions and billions of shillings for roads. Some counties are doing original roads. Some are just doing, if you look at the quality of roads. Those are the kind of things that the ethics and the corruption should also be investigating. Interrogate those things that Parliament is doing. The law requires equitable development. When there's no equitable development, that is corruption. That's what is corruption. Theft by servant is not corruption. So this commission should go back and see what it's really supposed to be. It should uphold the rule of law. It cannot have its CEO appointed by politicians, contrary to the constitution, and think that it's going to fight. It's going to be, it has got any moral feet to stand on. So my submission is that I don't think that the real problem is the law. The real problem is more fundamental. The law is there. It's a failure to adhere to the design of the constitution, and also the incompetence of the people who are running the Anti-Corruption Commission. If they have taken over the crime fighting, they would have taken over the mandate of economic crimes. They have failed dismally. The question of odious debt should not be there today. They should have told us who the culprits are. And I would like the EACC to tell me why the press release dated 4th December 2015 by Halake Wako promising to unearth the Eurobond scandal has never released a report. Where's the judiciary in that? And we're talking about big money, $7 billion US, $7.1 billion US dollars. So I think we need to be more serious. Look at the report of activities and financial statement that the ESCC may publishes every year. Read through them. Where is the substance? Where is the substance in the fight against economic crimes in this country? Simpler diversions, the distortion, just making us look and hope for the moon to drop one day and eliminate the darkness in our villages. So my report card on the ESCC is 0 out of 10. And it cannot continue pursuing individuals who steal through expenditure only, who comparatively steal peanuts compared to those who steal through the budget, who borrow odious debt, which you cannot trace in the economy, in trillions of shillings, billions of shillings. The ACC shies away from them. When there's pressure to issue press statements that we are going to investigate, it issued one on 4th of August and on 4th December 2015. Halake Wako, the CEO, signed saying they're going to give us a report on the Eurobond issues. Up to today, they have not released the report. The judiciary is not there. So let us not look at fight over the crumbs that fall off the table. Let us get onto the table and even in the kitchen and determine how things are cooked. And so my submissions would be that this bill is just part of the efforts to make us look away from what is killing the country. Thank you. With that, I hand back the mic.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Senator. Very concrete points and very concrete statements. T.I. Gerald, I'd like you to speak on that before inviting Brian to speak on what is the role of the CSO and the public to ensure the proper implementation of such laws, even though the senator is saying we should shy away from looking at laws, if you may.
Thank you, Diana. The senator, reading from the comments that are coming up, about 13 now. I think reading from the comments that are coming down here, it's like the senator, from what people are saying, you are deconstructing ESCC to its brim, sending it like it's non-functional. And the senator spoke very clearly on the aspect that we have a myriad of legislations, and legislations is not the problem for this country, but the implementation of these legislations might be, the key problem. The full implementation might be the panacea to the corruption problem that we are facing. Being the co-host for this particular space, I would want to say that from the CSO's perspective, I think we have the same idea that in as much as we have so much, laws, the implementation of the same laws is what can help us, to effectively curb the corruption menace that we are having. But also it goes down to individuals. How are you as an individual able to, adhere to the tenets of integrity, adhere to the tenets of eschewing corruption at all levels, at an individual level per se. First of all, even before we, and I know most of us here are the ardent readers of the Bible. First of all, even before we spot the specks in the other's eyes. From here, being the co-host, I just want to hand it over back to the next speaker, who was Brian, I suppose, if
Yes.
I may. Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. To your question, to ensure proper civil society and just ensure the public have a proper implementation of these amendments of the anti-corruption laws, it's very important that there be an engagement, from a deliberate and active engagement from civil society and the public. And what we are doing currently is one of them: advocacy, awareness, to just raise awareness about the new amendments. If you're very keen, you must have realized some of the loopholes that have they still exist, even in these bills that have been set out for public participation. So it's upon us to bring out these nuances to the public, to educate them on the specific gaps and importance for them to engage. I think as my colleagues were discussing about some of the gaps that they can point out in the ASECA amendment, I think one thing caught me, this definition of proceeds of crime, of corruption rather. And I was just trying to compare this definition from what is provided under POCAMLA, and I actually realized there's some change of wording on decision on the definition of this word. And I just wondered why the drafters did not want to retain consistent definition of this word. And these are some of these things are what we need to bring out to the public, to just inform them that in legislation making process, there has to be consistency with that of principal laws. In this context, we're talking about POCAMLA, which deals with the proceeds of crime. and anti-money laundering. So these kind of gaps that have been established by my predecessors, speakers here, I don't want to repeat, are very critical for us to address them and give out our opinions to in order to just ensure that the same shapes the new developments of the law around anti-corruption. The other strategy that we can implement, civil society, is to ensure that we establish mechanisms to monitor how government agencies, such as EACC, enforce these laws post implementation, post enactment and the passing of these laws into substantive laws. We need to come up with mechanisms to ensure how government and agencies enforce these laws. I've seen the senator, my senator, has really explained in detail his displeasure of EACC and where it lacks. The previous speaker, the senator still had mentioned about the fact that some of these laws keep on bringing more mandates to EACC. And as we all know, these mandates, the law requires that money should follow the functions, but you find that EACC keeps on receiving more mandates with very minimal money. This also can also curtail, its optimum operation and ensuring that it works optimally as per the law. Even as we try to castigate EACC for its inadequacies and its inefficiencies in terms of addressing corruption issues, we can also try and also CSOs advocate for reforms around enhancing the capacity of EACC to perform its mandate. I've seen in the comment, someone has mentioned that EACC should actually be given the mandate to prosecute corruption cases. Actually, in these amendments, it's very beautiful to see that one of the key concerns that has always been faced in the anti-corruption court is that those who have been accused will always want to oppose EACC's move to institute civil cases. Yet the law allows EACC to actually prosecute anti-corruption cases that are civil in nature. So where we can actually say with objective that there is a missing link or rather weakness is the criminal cases that are investigated by EACC and files submitted to ODPP for prosecution. Actually, one of my key concerns also in these amendments that I've also noted in the SECA amendments, specifically these clause 9, have categorized some amendments as necessary and some unnecessary. Some are trying to shed in some confusion in terms of a definition here and there. But I ask myself, is the ODPP's decision to charge guidelines a blessing or a curse? Because ODPP has always used these guidelines, and the fact also that the Constitution provides that no one can direct ODPP. They've used these provisions to their advantage to decide on when to charge and when to withdraw these cases. So the role of civil society is to remain very vigilant in trying to bring out these inefficiencies in some of these oversight institutions. The other strategy that we can employ is collaboration with government agencies, EACC again, to just ensure that civil society's concerns are integrated into policy implementations, establishing regular feedback channels with these agencies to address any gaps and challenges in the law enforcement. Also, litigation is not far away tool for us. We need to provide legal support to individuals that are affected by corruption and those who are seeking justice through court proceedings, advocating for further legislative reforms for existing, if existing laws prove to be inadequate. and of course also to promote transparency by advocating for open data on government spending, procurement processes, and asset recovery efforts. My senator has been very vocal in educating the public about government spending and borrowing, and we need to keep on advocating for open data and government spending to just ensure that procurement processes are up to scratch and follow the law. To talk about the second limb of the question, I don't know, did you ask about the role alone, or there was any other subsequent question?
No, just that, because I wanted you to wear away from now being the project officer for TI.
Correct.
I wanted you to just after speaking on the role of the CSO, I wanted you to wear your hat now as an advocate of the High Court, and just touch on the changes as when you see the focus areas that the proposed amendments look at. We're looking at the Witness Protection Act, cap number 79. This enhances protection measures for whistleblowers and key witnesses in corruption cases. Now, how do these changes affect whistleblowers and witnesses in corruption cases, seeing that currently we've had a lot of people owning up and being very present and very vocal about the corruption cases that we have in the country, but them being doing whistleblowing leads to the high rise of the abductions that we currently see in the country. So how do these changes affect these whistleblowers and in these corruption cases, seeing that we've already stated that we should just call a thief as a thief? Let's not beautify corruption and just state that it's thief by the server. I don't know if I've gotten the name correctly. So how does this changes affect now wearing as an advocate of the High Court? Please, if you may, Brian.
Thank you very much. The amendments about the Witness Protection Act, some of them are very interesting. Some of them are geared towards protecting and actually enhancing, just incorporating whistleblowers into the protection regime of witnesses. However, I failed to follow at some point where the drafters appear to sound like they still consider whistleblowers as witnesses as previously comprehended, such that when you see, for example, and also some of the amendments, actually, I find them to be a bit quite limiting. And if I may begin from definition of whistleblower, I do not protest or oppose the definition of whistleblower. However, my concern is that if a definition such as what has been provided under the amendment, it's a bit limiting. Yeah, there is no international legal instrument or any standard that has defined whistleblower, and the term is not defined literally even within the United Nations Convention on Anti-Corruption. So, and there is a good reason for that. The fact that you leave room for interpretation, because it's on a case-to-case basis. Yeah, so that if you provide a specific definition for this kind of individuals based on their actions, and then you could be potentially be limiting protection to that extent. So I would say that provisions such as, for example, to include whistleblowers, I've seen throughout the act mentioning, and the fact that whistleblowers now are being incorporated as protected persons, and I was just wondering this throughout the entire amendment. There is an addition of whistleblower immediately after witnesses, which essentially means that whistleblowers are being incorporated. But right away from the title, the long title, the short title of the act, I was just wondering why is it not, for example, Witness and Whistleblower Protection Act? Why wasn't it thought like that? Why not Witness and Whistleblower Protection Agency? And we still have Witness Protection Agency. Could it be by design that, well, we could be placing these whistleblowers in here through these amendments, but still leave out substantive intention to protect these individuals or not? Well, it could be my overthinking, and I could be wrong on that. But I still feel that the sense the drafter may still be having in their minds that a witness includes a whistleblower. Otherwise, the word participants should also be deleted, and the new word former participants, as it has been provided, been amended in clause 22. You see, there are a couple of words that still don't make sense, but by and large, we can say that there are good things that have been proposed in these amendments that we can work with. And there are some clauses that need to be corrected. And I hope that we'll be making submissions with regards to some of inadequacies that have been left out in the amendment. To conclude my submissions on whether these laws will actually protect whistleblowers, I've seen the provision on protection of confidential information relating to whistleblowers. This is very important. Initially, this was not protected. And also the establishment of the fund to also just ensure that these individuals are cautioned. There's also another provision that has enforced a recent judgment, the case that we were parties, the Spencer Sakale versus Masai Mara University case. Clause 48 of the bill, it has now proposes to protect whistleblowers from any action or proceeding, including disciplinary action, for assisting courts of law or enforcement agencies. So any whistleblower that may have done the Whistleblower Act may not be criminalized based on that act, as what the court had said in that judgment. So by and large, you can say that some of the amendments that we can see here are being extracts from judgments that have been set out in our courts. And so we can literally say objectively that that these amendments are geared to ensure the protection of witnesses and whistleblowers. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Brian. That is a very concrete understanding. So before I resume, I hand over the mic to Gerald. I'd like to read some few comments, and let us not shy away from the fact that these new laws that keep on being proposed, we have a lot of laws that don't even focus on the situations at hand that we have as a country. We are doing bad as a country, and I'm really hoping that I know I've put David on the hot seat. I'm really hoping that you'll be able to address some of the issues raised by the senator. So just to read a few comments by our listeners, one by Kip Korir. He's saying, do ESCC have professionals who are able to interrogate government documents to scrutinize them for corruption loopholes? Kenya's parliament are making corruption a norm for the system, basically reiterating what the senator had stated. There's another one, the ESCC swings like a pendulum. You are investigating or acquitted based on your political affiliation, waiting to see if they take action after mentioning Kericho Referral Hospital among the most corrupt institutions in Kenya. This again, reiterating what the senator had already stated. This will be opposed to TI Kenya and any other civil society organization that is listening in. There's one participant who has said, today's civil society is weak and doesn't bite as opposed to yesteryears. Civil society was a force to be reckoned with. what has gone wrong. So this is a challenge to us in the CSO sector. And I feel like Brian had already addressed that our work is to do advocacy and awareness. So I'll tag that question to TI. Knowing that your core mandate is transparency, how can we get back to where the CSO was? Because I feel like there's a lot of work that we are doing that is undocumented. So TI, Gerald, posing the question to you, putting in hot seat. Please respond to that.
Thank you, our host for today, Maskani. And I'm now being put on a seat to respond on behalf of others. I think I'll say, with regards to that particular same question, I think if I may say that the mode of operations for most of the civil society organizations is what has changed as opposed to the yesteryears, as the speakers put it. I think most of the yesteryears, or quote unquote, to use his words, were most of we could see a lot of actions. Let me use a loose word, on the streets, demos and all that. But since I may say the country has become so much litigious, I think most of the work that is being done, and from my own personal view, is a lot of it, we are seeing it in courts as well, which have brought very progressive judgments. I think one of them has just come today with the Katiba Institute case on with regards to the protests that were happening last year. So such instances, most of the work I think has moved into the courtrooms, which I'll say are bringing, from my own personal point of view, very progressive judgments. But Lynette, before David, who was from the ESCC, maybe says a few things, because ESCC
Yes.
has been mentioned so many times here. Why don't we give a few minutes for those who've also joined in to, also have a say on this, because everyone else's voice matter on this. So is very much public for us to also contribute.
Yes. I've seen Kangoa Jalego. I have approved you to speak. I don't know if you're able to do so. And if you want to ask a question, please just request for approval. I'll approve you. Kangoa Jalego, if you can hear me. Okay. I'm not seeing anyone else who has. Okay, let me see the requests. There's someone who has requested. Ben, if you may. Ben Murray. Okay. I don't know if it's on my end or Gerald. Can you hear me from your end?
From your end, you're very clear. I don't know if those who are requested to speak, if they've been approved, if they can speak. I cannot listen to anyone. But if you do not have anyone else who's requested to speak for now, can we bring David back on?
Yes, we may.
David.
Thank you. Still listening, still on course. I think I have profound respect for Senator Omtatah. I think he has proved time and again that he's a courageous soul in this fight against corruption and many other ills that afflict our society. Sometimes he takes the bull by the horns as a soul fighter. Actually, I have also managed to listen to him. He serves in a very important committee of the Senate that actually interrogates a number of these things. It's a bit unfortunate that Honorable Senator thinks that EACC is the problem. And of course, he has given many of the reasons why he thinks that EACC is the problem. I'm sure I cannot dissuade the Honorable Senator from that kind of conviction. But you'll bear me all the listeners that when he started explaining his convictions, he actually pointed to a bigger problem that surpasses EACC. Of course, he talked about the structural issues, the capacity constraints, which I think have a bearing. But the main issue that he addressed when he now explained his points to me, he was demonstrating how many entities in Kenya are not working together. There is a generally what I would call lack of proper coordination, collaboration, cooperation in terms of the fight against corruption by the other entities, because it is not just the EACC that fights corruption. Almost every other entity out there has a role to play. So for example, we have other entities like the controller of budget, we have the auditor general, we have the treasury, we have central bank, we have the judiciary, we have the professional associations, including the civil society, of which Wakili has ably talked about their role. And still, I would say that Parliament itself, where the Honorable Senator serves, can also not be absolved of blame. One thing I may want to agree with the Senator is that when he says that we can not always blame the law, that is a truth. Sometimes we also need to implement the laws that we have, demonstrate that we have the will to do that. But again, that takes cooperation among all the entities. Each and every entity must play its role. We cannot say we are leaving all this to the EACC. And when the Senator says that Kenya is a country of the rule of law, I agree with him again, because what he is saying is that we really cannot do away with the law. So what the law that we have in place, we definitely have to keep reviewing it every now and then. Remember, law is applied in a continuum. It is dynamic. It is a moving process. So as we move on in implementing this law, we come across challenges, we identify loopholes, we identify weaknesses, which these people who steal the money, what the Senator calls thieves. But to me, even if they are corrupt or thieves, it is the same name. We are just defining the same persons because they are stealing our resources, our public resources. They exploit these loopholes. And what this bill is proposing to do is some kind of tweaking the law or looking at some of the existing loopholes that have been used and try to fix them so that as we move on, we can keep seeing, and whatever happens then we can see the advantages that derive from proposing these amendments. Of course, the Senator has really not touched on the main laws and the issues that are being projected by these proposed amendments. I would have really loved to hear from him what he feels or what he thinks about each of these proposals. But again, I respect his decision to look at them globally. He has also touched on another law that was not in discussion. When he was talking about the definition of a relative, I think he was alluding to the conflict of interest bill, which is currently in the Senate. I would have really loved to hear what the Senate has done about that bill. So for me, I think the strategies to fight corruption have to keep changing with the times, and we have to keep doing what we can as a country. We have institutions, we have the laws, we cannot do away with that. And what he is proposing, for example, that we put all these people behind bars under the police, that will still have to be done through a legal framework, and it will have its own weaknesses, which we really also have to look into. So what he's proposing actually might start taking us in a circle, and we will not go anywhere. So for me, I would say, let's look at what is positive in these proposals. Let's not engage in a blame game. Again, when my honorable senator, from where he sits, I know he can influence the policy, he can influence the law, and I really love what he's been doing, because he's one of the best promoters of integrity through the parliament. But I think we need to do more than that. So for those, everybody must realize what role they have to play, and we have to do that. So I completely agree with Brian when he talks about the role of the civil society, the CSOs, and he has actually correctly outlined the various roles that they can play, over in addition to what Gerard also talked about. So for me, those are my few remarks. Allow me please not to go into each and every issue that was raised by the Honorable Senator. This might actually not be the best forum for that. And again, number two, I think my authority was limited to responding to issues on the proposed amendments. Thank you, Lynette.
Thank you very much, David. I had seen Alan Mwanda had requested. I don't know if you're still on. I've approved you. Kindly, you can ask the question. If possible, one, in the interest of time. Alan, if you may. Alan Mwanda, if you can hear me, you had raised your question. Or if you're not able to, just post it on the comment section. Then I can ask. Okay.
Hello, you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Alan. Go ahead.
Okay. So I really agree with Senator, especially on the point that we need to stop sugarcoating theft. I've spoken in a few spaces before and I've raised the same point. Hii maneno ya kurembesha wizi is why our country is collapsing. Because people are stealing money left and right, and we are putting them on a pedestal. We are celebrating them stealing from us. And in fact, they are, even here on social media, boasting the wealth they have acquired illegally. Wanaringa na magari, wanaringa na manyumba kubwa. But at the end of the day, that is our public money that they have stolen to build those mansions, that they have stolen to drive those cars. Because how can you explain someone who is earning 100,000 Kenya shillings, an MCA, he has 5 cars, he has 15 houses, he's a landlord, and he has accumulated all this wealth in one sitting as an MCA in 5 years. It is obvious, clear as day, theft. But we do nothing, we accept. In fact, we clap for them when they present a new car on social media, when they are posting on Instagram. And this is the kind of nonsense that we need to fight. Because when we entertain thieves, they gain confidence to steal even more. That's why these people are not afraid to steal even billions. People are stealing hundreds of millions. These are not small figures. These are not small figures. If 1 trillion Kenya shillings, that's our whole budget, can be stolen by one president, which is our current one, in 2 years. He stole a whole budget in 2 years. Because if we write a budget this year, it will be around 2 trillion, 3 trillion, if it's an honest budget. But what they want to do, they want to make a budget even huge as possible. So you see budgets of 4 trillion, almost 5 trillion. But we don't need all that budget. And it's budget they cannot even raise. They know very well KRA will never raise 4 trillion. Now they want to take loans for that 4 trillion so that they can steal all the loans, like the way Senator was saying. These guys have stolen so much. Now the economy is not enough for them to steal. They need to exaggerate the budget so that they can go ahead and borrow based on that budget, then steal that loan. So we are digging a ditch and then filling it with more ditch, because if we are taking loans for them to be directly stolen, do nothing, no development, no nothing. These guys write budgets, then 80% of the budget is recurring expenditures. What is recurring expenditures? Is money that's going into their pocket. There's no development budget. Like the current budget that's coming for 2025, for development in a 4 trillion budget. Where is 3 trillion going? You want to tell me we are paying people salaries worth 3 trillion for 1 year? Of course not. It's budgeted theft. And people are just okay with that. We should not be okay with thieves planning to steal and writing how they'll steal in our budget. Because that's basically what they're doing. They're writing how they will steal in our budget. Trillion. Have a look over here, and then we will only give you a few roads, a few fake roads, the ones they spray paint with black paint, juju, barabara in 2 months back to potholes for 800 billion. But hii 3 trillion hapa, hii tumepanga, tumetenga, tunaenda kuifagia. And we are being robbed. We're being robbed as Kenyans because that's your tokens. That's your VAT that you pay in Naivas every time you do shopping. That is your pay, that he takes half your payslip, which he has raised again for this year. So if we are being finished to the last drop, you have no money in your pocket so that these guys can allocate 3 trillion to themselves. 2,000 leaders want to take money from 60 million Kenyans to allocate to themselves. Why are we okay with that? Why is no one concerned? Senator, you're in the Senate. Why do we have 300 leaders in the Senate passing this nonsense? Surely, 4 trillion budget, you can't even allocate half to development, 2 trillion, and everyone is okay and they're passing that thing. What kind of budget, what kind of finance bill is that we are being brought? We already fought 2024 finance bill. Now they want to bring 2025 finance bill, which is even more nonsense than 2024. And then the president can stand on TV and say the country is okay. The guy is burying his head in the sand, saying the country is okay. Country is okay, and we have SHA. You can't even pay the hospital if you're sick. Okay, SHA is not working. What happened to all the money we were deducted for NHIF? Where did all that money go? How is NHIF now suddenly broke because they rebranded it, changed the name? We are accepting nonsense because how can you tell me university students, they're on the road protesting because they can't get help when it has been working for 4 presidents? Now when it is Ruto's turn, it doesn't work. Why are we accepting this? It's because we have put thieves on a pedestal, because these guys now, they don't even fear stealing. Mwizi wa jogoo akiiba in your village, you burn him. He's put to the stake, taya anawekelewa kwa shingo. But these guys, they are stealing hundreds of billions, trillions of money. Where is their tire? Where is the anger? We accept. They move to Karen. Mtu amepata kiti 2 years, move to Karen. Why is nobody questioning that change of lifestyle? Where are the police? Surely, if me today I rob a bank, the next day I move to Karen, I will not live in Karen for a week. I will be in jail. They will find me as a bank robber and put me in jail. But if they steal from our budget and move to Karen, it's perfectly all right. No, it's not. We should not accept being stolen from, and we should call these people thieves. That's my point. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Alan. You have really spoke my mind. I think you've literally basically summarized what this space was all about. And I'd like Senator to just touch on the areas that Alan has spoken as you give your final remarks, if you may, because I'm seeing we are running out of time. If you may, Honorable. I don't know if the Honorable is still in. Okay. Gerald, would you like to wrap up the conversation?
Absolutely, but going from what Alan has spoken, I mean,
Yeah.
it's very clear that we should not be very much comfortable with what is happening. And so, trying to check if we have anyone else who has raised their hands to give them the mic for the last few seconds that I'm not seeing, maybe from the chat or from your end. Did you see any? No.
No, none.
Local
Probably. I haven't seen any, but probably you can just read some of the comments that we haven't touched as you just take over.
Right. Salim. Kenyan says we also need to address. Oh no, that is not particularly what we were discussing today, because Salim is talking to an aspect that maybe we should also plan to speak about. We also need to address why our children are being told to go back to their ancestral homes to get IDs. Maybe we could plan to speak on this again, on this specifically, on that, Maskani. Salim is also saying that EACC is swinging like a pendulum. You are investigating or acquitted, or you are investigated or acquitted based on your political affiliations. All right. Mudhoria says Senator Omtatah knows his stuff on ending corruption. You can count on him to get it done. Okay. Those are the views from the people who are speaking in the chat. The senator is back. Was that the sound of the senator?
Yeah,
No.
I was back. I had to log out and then log in. I think my system had frozen.
Absolutely.
But I was hearing all that transmit. I had to log out and log back in.
Absolutely.
First of all, I would like to correct the speaker who spoke last, is that the senators, only 67 senators. That is 16. That is 48, 47 elected, and the 20 nominated, who are two for the youth, and then we have got 16 for women and 2 for disability. Now the nominated senators don't have a vote in the Senate. It's only the elected senators, the 47, who have got a vote on these issues, including making of the law. So the budget does not come to the Senate. We are still fighting to get it to come to the Senate, because there are express provisions in the Constitution, like Article 249, Clause 3, that require the Senate, and they require Parliament, that Senate and the National Assembly, to ensure that independent commissions are fully funded and whatever, and that means the Judicial Service Commission, that means the Parliamentary Service Commission, it means the EACC, TSC, and others. We're trying to get that enforced, but the executive is more comfortable dealing with the bigger, I think 369 member House Assembly than with the smaller Senate, which because it is smaller, everybody knows everybody else, and maybe it's easier to be deliberative and to determine something. But all said and done, what I'm trying to stress is that, first of all, zillions more is stolen on the revenue side of things. There's hardly any focus on theft through the budget. I've never seen the EACC audit our budget and tell us it passes muster or it has failed. There's a lot of budgeted corruption. Whether or not they have capacity, I don't know. But economic crimes would inquire, if you are dealing with economic crimes, would inquire you to interrogate documents through which economic crimes are committed. White collar crimes are committed through paper. So I'd expect the EACC to be poring over paper to see whether the documents you have are correct. You have got all these cases whereby laws have been amended to facilitate theft, deliberately so. The EACC has never taken any action on it. It is very busy chasing policemen who are taking bribes. Important as it is, we cannot afford to ignore the mega theft that happens on the revenue side of things. And we must up our act. As regards fighting crime, I am somebody who believes in following the text of the Constitution. And when I look at Article 79, it's very clear that the EACC is supposed to implement Article 6, which is basically a code of conduct. People are behaving well in private and in public. They are reporting to work. They are bringing honor to the office. They are, when they're being appointed, they are suitable. All those kind of things. They don't run bank accounts outside their state officers. They must be citizens for certain jobs. Those are the kind of things the ACC is supposed to do. They are keeping time. They are staying on their place of work. Crime busting, the way we have it in our constitution, is a police affair. And if we want a special police unit to be set up, Parliament has been given that power under Article 247 to do so that under the Inspector General, we can hold the police, especially that particular police unit, together with the DCI, accountable. But then when you go back and look at the way they're also appointed, when they amended the National Police Service Act in 2014 to remove the requirement for competitive recruitment of the police, to remove the requirement for a tribunal when removing the Inspector General or the Deputy Inspector General or the DCI, they left the police to serve at the pleasure of the president. So the institution becomes ineffective. When Parliament oversteps its mandate and goes to appoint the CEO of the EACC, when the Constitution clearly says the commissioners should appoint the CEO, we undermine those institutions. And the CEO of the EACC now, through the CEO, becomes loyal to Parliament and not to the commissioners. So let us take the matters of design a bit seriously in terms of our Constitution, and let us work. The laws are important, but let us not over-focus on the laws. Before we enact new laws, the way we are churning them out, let us do audits. Let it be an informed movement forward, not a shot in the dark. The EACC prosecuting, I personally find that outrageous. In the design of our Constitution, the prosecutorial powers and investigative powers are separated. So when you try to fuse these two organs, it might lead to the problem where we came from earlier, these kind of things. And I've liked what has been said about the powers of the DPP. The decision to charge, that document called the decision to charge. And even the DPP says that there is a gatekeeper to the courts. It said that. That particular thing has brought us a lot of problems. Remember when we had the NYS scandal too, where we had Kabura and whatever, Kafura or Kabura. When those things happened, the banks were found by the Central Bank of Kenya, which investigated, found banks guilty of having violated codes of conduct, and even some who had been criminal conduct, money laundering. So the banks, the Central Bank of Kenya, fined about 8 Kenyan banks, but said for the criminal component, I am handing over to the DPP, to the police and the DPP to investigate. The police investigated and confirmed that the economic crimes had been committed by these banks, and sent the file over to the DPP to prosecute. Instead, Haji then as the DPP went and negotiated out of court. Find this by told that he find the banks some money so that they don't appear in court. They paid some money to a fund, to a slush fund they run at the DPP's called something. There's a fund under the DPP's office that the DPP can collect money from whatever. So they put in a slush fund and they put in money in that place. How I came to learn of this is that when the COVID happened, the DPP donated about 1 billion shillings. When I looked at it, it was almost more than the budget the DPP gets. So I decided to investigate how did Haji money to come across this kind of money. Doesn't I realize that banks and other people, criminals said they were being fined by the DPP and they don't appear in court. Now, if you look at Article 157, the DPP is basically an officer of the court who acts in court, not outside court, who acts in court so that even if you want to settle a matter outside court without prosecution, then the court supervises that procedure. We have seen in some cases they have tried to withdraw criminal cases, but the courts have refused. Now, if there's no mandatory requirement that the cases must go to court, and the DPP becomes the gatekeeper of what gets prosecuted or not, and is allowed to collect money in lieu of prosecution, we're just getting ourselves into very, very difficult situations. So we need to look at the collectivity of all these laws when it comes to punishment. That was a very clear case of corruption, cracked by the central bank, the regulatory body, given to the police, investigated, police found a case, evidence of money laundering, given to the DPP to prosecute. The DPP decides to negotiate out of court. I say that is fining these banks. Where does one get such a rogue powers? So I think I was very happy with that particular installment. So we need to look at the powers of the DPP in terms of the decision to charge. But even though Parliament is allowed, I think under Article 157 12 to set up other prosecutorial bodies, I think the EACC may not be a proper body for prosecution. If it's going to investigate, let the investigation and the prosecution be separate so that the prosecutor can also be a balance, a check on the investigator, so that people don't get fixed. The prosecutor can wait for a matter to be charged in court, and then if it's not merited, they can withdraw it, protect an individual. But the matters must go to court. If the investigator says, I have a case against somebody, let it go to court, and if the DPP feels it's not worth it, after it has gone to court, they can recall it, they have all powers. But the DPP to decide in darkness that this one will not go to court, for me, undermines a lot of fight against theft of public funds. And I'm sure many of even the files that the EACC may have sent there have suffered a similar fate. So to me, I really pray that we treat the question of theft of public funds as an existential threat, as something that has denied us the promise of this republic. We cannot afford today to be having a per capita income of $1,900. That is being that poor. We have got too many poor people in this country. And the role of leadership is to convert resources into wealth. If we cannot convert our English into wealth, whereby because we are a very good English-speaking country, we cannot convert that English into call centers and what have you, so that the call centers go to India and China where they don't speak as good English as us, simply because our infrastructure is dilapidated, then you have a problem. That's also an element where we should look at and say, what is preventing us from achieving our potential? If our minerals are just being taken off the land in a way that we don't care, there's so many illicit mineral mines around. I've not seen any report on them. Assuming the ECC is fighting economic crimes, I've told you go through that report. There's nothing on mining, and we're losing gazillions of shillings through illicit mining and those kind of stuff. So I really pray that We don't leave it. We don't leave the fight against the theft of public funds to politicians or to police or to whatever. It is an existential fight that it requires the energy of all of us. I agree. When the unbogable revolution happened, the Kenyans were up in arms and were even arresting cops on the road as a symbolic gesture. But the politicians again sank it. Another thing that's now very important for politics is there's this question. Who between the ESCC and the IBC should declare candidates in terms of integrity? You find that the habit has been that the ESCC can produce a list based on its mandate to enforce Article 79 of people who should not be allowed to run for political office because of baggage, what have you. But then you find that the ESCC disregards them because of, I think, Article 88, where they have got the mandate to clear candidates. So that kind of nonsensical contradiction between institutions is another area whereby you are not able to fight corruption in this country. I don't see why the ESCC and the IBC cannot harmonize, whereby the clearance by IBC of candidates should be informed by the report of the ESCC on suitability of candidates for certain positions. So there are a lot of those kind of things that are happening in this country that allow corruption to be a rewarding enterprise. And one of the most paying enterprises in this country is corruption. Look at the rich, the list of who is who in this country. Either civil servants or politicians. Very few entrepreneurs. Somebody has talked about officials being appointed. I know very many judges today who are appointed and their address was changed overnight. Where did they get the money? Some of the billionaires we have in this country are judges in our courts. You know their salaries. As the ACC tried to get them to account for these lifestyles. And so when a judge is clearly parading proceeds of crime, how will he be able to preside over prosecution of criminals? So we've got a lot of these things going on that I personally feel that maybe as a people, we have not yet realized the threat of this thing we call corruption, which is theft by servant, and the lost opportunities that theft of taxes has messed us. Look at the appointments to parastatals, the boards of parastatals, the CEOs. When they become so tribalized, that's corruption. Why is the IBC quiet? Huh? When appointments are so corrupt, so good, in favor of communities that have got power, why can't the IBC the ESCC take action? So that's what I'm saying. Much as we may say good laws are good and what have you, I think we need to have an audit, and maybe the new laws should define what mandate of the IBC is, the ESCC is, when looking at what we call corruption. What exactly they should look at? They have left their areas and are engaging in crime busting, which they are doing poorly. So that this country is facing an existential threat from the theft of public resources, the abuse of public resources, and those kind of things. They need to be looked into and audited. Come to the Senate right now. We have been told that the Senate has spent about I don't know how much, quite a big figure of people traveling. But if you go to audit, you'll find that it's just a small clique and the speaker who are traveling around the globe trotting. And they say the senators are always traveling. So you ask yourself, why is that the case? Why is the IB? Why is the ESCC? to come and look at that budget, how it has been spent. Does the EACC ever go into a budget and ask that this is how this budget has been spent? Can we have the list of people who have traveled in the Senate and how much each has been spent on, how much per diem, those kind of things? Maybe that will streamline institutions. But waiting to catch these poor policemen on the road, much as it's important not to have policemen extorting money and allowing unqualified drivers and unroadworthy vehicles on our roads, it's critically important to go and look into budgets, because the only policy document a government has is a budget. I've never seen a report of the EACC interrogating a budget of anything, not even of a cattle dip. And that's why the theft happens. So it's a good thing and those who remark, I say, thank you very much for the organizers to speak on this. I mean, I've gotten a bit passionate about it because I'm really scared of what is facing in terms of the debt trap. Very soon, we might be auction. It will be tenants in our own country.
Thank you very much, Senator. Thank you very much, Senator. What a good way to live with fellow Kenyans and friends of Kenya, ladies and gentlemen, that let us not leave the fight against theft of public funds to politicians, but let us take individual initiatives. We are 10 minutes past the hour that we promised, and as much as we would have loved to continue with this conversation all, I think it would be a good time to bring it to a conclusion at this point, so that we don't also engage into the theft of time. We have already gone 10 minutes past the time, but we promise to organize more of this so that we can always can on these key matters to our country, to our children and to our children's children. Just a reminder that the Office of the Auditor General invited the public views on this Anti-Corruption Amendment Bill 2025, and I think the deadline is on the 14th, the 14th of February this month. Yes, allow us to bring it to a conclusion for now. Maskani, host, please.
Yes. Thank you very much to our speakers and my co-host, my fellow co-host, TI Kenya. Thank you very much. We will definitely have more of these spaces. And in the interest of time, please allow us to end this space. And any questions or any queries you may have, you can forward them to TI Kenya or to Maskani ya Taifa as well. Thank you so much and have a lovely evening.